Okay, I'm back. This is Amy live quilting at 7. Well, we started at 7, had a little technical difficulty and had to restart the video. So this is part 2, and I am continuing to quilt on this teapot quilt. It's a combination of attic windows, pieced attic windows, and applique teapots. Those of you, I can see a few watching. If you can give me a thumbs up or a comment, let me know. If you can see me and hear me in part 1, I bumped my phone and hit a button and the screen stopped showing what I was doing. So we're back at it now. I am quilting on a Janome 15,000. This is my personal machine, my favorite machine. I am a Janome dealer, so, I could choose a few things. And thank you, Maja. She says everything looks and sounds great. So we will just keep on stitching. So I love doing these little swirly pebbles. And one of the reasons I do them with a swirl is just gives it a little bit more interest. And I do know, I've seen a lot of the major long arm quilters do these little pebbles with a double circle in them. And I got to tell you, when I try to do them, they look like olives with pimentos or eyeballs. And the swirl turns out a lot better. Let's get you in there so you can actually see what I'm doing. A lot of time in my videos, I'll use a plainer fabric and a brighter thread so you can see what I'm doing, but this is a sample for my shop. So gotta make a few concessions sometimes. So I'm gonna do another feather. So there's the start of my little spine. And I'm doing shorter, fatter feather plumes. And I'm going to stop right there. And I'm going to come right up the ditch here and put a pebble in here where I kind of left an empty spot. It's not too bad. I could maybe leave it unquilted. But it always bothers me when I've got an area that I just think is just unquilted. I am all about the quilting. I love some good piecing. I do some good piecing from time to time. But I am really all about doing my quilting. It is what makes me happy. And whatever you do creatively, I hope you're doing something that makes you happy. Hi, Ginger. Yep. I love doing quilting, and it does take, I have done quite a bit of practice. A lot of people will say, oh, it looks so wonderful. I can't do as well as you. And well, we're not in a competition. Just keep practicing. Doodling helps a lot. Just get out a notepad, paper, a dry erase board. You can use a drawing app on your phone or tablet. Now, I am going to back the phone up. I'm going to make very careful to not bump any buttons this time. And I'm going to give you a little bigger look at this. Oops. Right now I've got it in my hand because the mount just came off in my hand. There is my far left of my quilt. All the rest is up in here. And there's no reason to have that all stuffed in there other than to keep the teapot looking nice and straight for you guys. So I'm going to rotate my quilt just a little bit and get some of that out of there. Please bear with me while I get my phone back on my camera mount because it is not cooperating. Oh my word. Y'all be gentle with me. I am not a professional videographer, but I do love making these videos. Sometimes it just does not want to work out right. So I'm going to rotate this quilt. And I have two reasons for this. One is I don't need to have all the quilt shoved up underneath the machine. I have plenty of space for it. That's not the issue. But it was also putting a lot in my lap. And now I can turn it around over here and I can show you more of that block and what we're going to do with it. So, oh, Ginger, I have to show the Genomes. I've been a Genome girl for years. There goes my daggum phone again. May be due for a new mount. Let's try this again. For heaven's sake. Genomes are real workhorses in my point of view. Now, you guys may not realize this since you don't follow me on my Facebook stuff, or many of you might not, I don't know. My husband is a Genome machine tech now. So I bought the sewing machine shop, and he, who has always been a Mr. Fix-It kind of fella, very handy, learned to fix sewing machines. And he has been inside a lot of machines, and he loves the Genomes. Let me get all these little connectors nice and tight so we can stop wiggling everywhere. So we joke that he knows the guts and I know the glory of the machines. There we go. Now you guys can see it better. Now we're not going to quilt this way. Oh goodness. If I quilt this way, we're going to get some funky looking stitches, but I need to bring over my handy dandy marking pen. And we're going to mark on here. So when I first got this pattern and was looking at it for quilting it, I wanted to do something like a wood grain in here, but this is a shop sample. I don't want to go too over the top with my quilting. And I just felt like if I did a wood grain in here, it would be just too much. We're already doing a pretty fancy little fill in here and around the teapots. So I wanted to simplify this. And on these attic window blocks, we've got a nice little miter here and then a straight piecing line here. And so we got a 90 degree and a 45. And so what I'm doing is I'm essentially kind of doing straight lines, not measuring anything. We're not doing ruler work. We're not trying to get it all super tweaked, but just trying to keep it, this is funny, keep the line straight, but keep the angling at a nice even rate. So it's straight here, and then we just start increasing that angle until it matches up with the 45. So those marks just help me line things up. Those are not my actual stitching lines. They're just guidelines to keep me on the right angles in the right places. So we're going to plump up our quilt. Like to have a series of hills and valleys to help support the weight. That way I can move this without having to move all of this. And then we're going to rotate the quilt. So when you are free motion quilting, it's really easy to push the quilt this way, but if you start pulling the quilt towards you, you will get, one, a change in your tension, and two, a lot of times you will end up getting some shredded stitches because of just the way that the thread comes out the back of the needle. It can cause your stitches to go from the left to the right around the needle, and you get kind of jagged lightning bolt looking stitches. And we don't want that. And we also don't want that change in tension on every other line. So I'm just pivoting my quilt just a little bit. And so you can see how important these lines are now, because I've got my quilt on an angle. And we're going from ditch to ditch. I tried doing it with just a curve kind of coming back in here, and I didn't like it. So we're going from ditch to ditch. I could use my ruler, so I could change out to my ruler foot and use rulers, but I don't want it to look that formal. Remember, I was talking about doing that wood grain. And so I think doing a free form straight line kind of gives me that look without actually having to go to doing some kind of design. Just a little more organic, if that makes sense. Before I start stitching, let's camera mount, don't fail me now. There we go. I'm going to stay away from those buttons. This is part 2. I did start off earlier with part 1. We didn't get too far, but I hit a button and we had to restart. So sorry about that. So just coming over here, and I can pay attention to what part of my foot is hitting this seam and then use that to kind of guide myself without having to go to rulers. And I love my rulers. If you've been watching me for a long time, my videos were really the first ones out there on free motion quilting with rulers, or at least with using a ruler foot. And I love my rulers, but they are slow. You've got to take the time to position them just right and line them up just right. And it can really be slow. So anything that I can do freehand, I want to do freehand. It just makes better use of my time. In this case, I want to have kind of a more organic shape to everything. So that works out well. But if you ever talk to a long armer about quilting one of your quilts and you want them to do ruler work on it, they will let you know really quickly that it costs a lot more because it takes a lot more time. So that's the last of my fairly straight 90-degree angle line right there. And now we're going to start getting those angles. And I know with the quilt on an angle, it's kind of hard to tell that, but we are, take my word for it, we are slowly starting to angle these lines so that by the time we get to the end, we have a lovely little 45-degree angle coming into that miter. And I'm not necessarily using these lines to stitch on. If I was, I'd be marking out every single one, which brings us right back to the whole concept of, trying to get everything just so gets to be really slow. And I need to get this quilt done and hung in my shop so people can be inspired by the fabric and the quilt and do their own thing with it. So they're not perfectly straight. I probably could be going a little bit faster. And the lines are not spaced evenly. I am varying that, and I think that helps me get that that wood grain kind of effect with the addition of the miter here that gives it kind of a perspective. And we're right there in the corner. I have not decided what I'm going to do in the rest of the attic window block, but I haven't finished doing this teapot, so I'm going to go ahead from here, go up around this block, and maybe we'll do a little more background fill before we give up for the night. So I'm just pulling some more of those basting threads. Don't want to have a bunch of basting threads tied up in my quilt when I get done. Because once you've quilted on the same lines over and over, they're a lot harder to take out. So I hope you're enjoying this video. Like I said, this quilting live on YouTube is fairly new to me. I think I'm going to go ahead and come up in here and then come back and fill in just a little bit of this little space, because it's a very tiny little space. I might as well fill it in, finish that stitch in the ditch right there, and I won't have to come back to it. So I think the hardest thing it's going to be for me with doing these YouTube videos is remembering what I've said in this video versus what I may have said in a Facebook video or in my Clubhouse videos. So my Clubhouse is a Janome only membership group for people to get more teaching on their Janome machines. For those of you who are familiar with Janomes, it's for the S6 models and higher, and we go back all the way to the 12,000. We don't do any other models older than that because I have not had hands-on work with those other than the ones that might get brought into our shop for service and repair. And well, it's just not a good thing to go and use your customers' machines for your own purposes. So we draw the line at the 12,000 for the Amy Quilts Clubhouse. And we go all the way up to the M7 and the 15,000. We have fun. Sometimes you just don't have either time or access to lessons at your dealer, or maybe you don't have a dealer anymore. So that's what I do there. That's not the prettiest feather right there, but I will try to take my own advice and not badmouth my quilting. I tell my customers in the store that are not allowed to put themselves down when they're learning something new, whether that's a new technique or a new machine. There we go. Ginger's asking, do I pin or spray based? Well, on this quilt, I did have a long armor thread based it, but if I'm basting my quilts, I pin based. I've never really had a good place to set up for spray based. And overspray of spray based ends up getting all kinds of dust stuck to it, and I just have not done it. I do use spray based occasionally for embroidery projects, you know, quilting in the hoop, machine embroidered applique, but I don't use it for basting myself. I find pins work pretty well for me, but I think you have to find what works good for you. Hey, woo mate. I almost thought it said wombat for a minute. We've got a bunch of Aussies on. How are you? Hope you are well. Let's do a nice paisley coming up out of here. Just coming around here. Yeah, I started doing this fill and I haven't even finished doing my stitch in the ditch. I have a feeling that's something we need to get back to. Stitch in the ditch is so boring. Necessary on some quilts. There we go, right in the ditch. I'm going to continue that little ruffle. And I'm just going to go ahead and come up in that corner in the ditch. You gotta be careful sometimes on quilts. If you're quilting in one area and not quilting in another, you can get a lot of fullness in the areas that have not been quilted. So you gotta watch out for that. Wait a minute. Is that my lovely Miss G and her sister? I don't know. I know they're Janome gals, and they are twins, and they stick together like glue quite a bit. Yes, it is. Hello, hello. See, I should make sure to use my pointer. That was a gift from Miss G. All right, so we need a nice swirl up here. See, and there I got away from doing my stitch in the ditch again. I'm being naughty. All right, let's get that stitch in the ditch done so we can do some more fun. Hello, Sue's Cap from Australia. Man, I am getting the Aussies tonight. That's wonderful. Bunch of morning people. I'm a bit of a night owl these days. All right, so now I'm over here in the corner, and I do not want to pull the quilt this way, so we're going to rotate just a smidge. That's all it takes, a little smidge, and that helps to make the thread go better at the needle. Let's see if I can, if we're lucky, I can get right in there, and you might be able to see it. I can't really do, what you call that, time lapse at the moment. I could edit it afterwards. But if you look at the needle, I'm trying to go nice and slow. The thread is coming out the back of the needle, and it's coming over to this side, to the right. If I have my fabric straight and I pull it towards myself, that thread will kind of move from the left to the right side as it comes from behind the needle. And that gives me kind of lightning bolt looking stitches. They just don't look nice. And the tension can change too. So we are just doing a little bit of an angle, and that just helps to encourage that thread to go off to the side, because one of the bad things that can happen when it's going back and forth from left to right, if you're pulling it directly towards yourself, is that instead of going to the left or to the right, it may get just perfectly timed so that the needle stabs the thread, and then you get shredded stitches, shredded thread. Shredded thread. Say that 10 times fast. So you just gotta get it just a little bit of an angle, and then it just stays to one side. It doesn't matter if it's left or right. I do prefer kind of off to the right for me. Let's maybe back out just a little bit. And we've got a little fullness here. I'm going to try to hold that flat and get that ditching done. So in an ideal world, I would stitch in the ditch for most of the main lines of the quilt to essentially stabilize all the edges. But I do little bits here and little bits there, and a video where somebody's watching me stitch in the ditch is, well, frankly, boring. So it's not perfectly stabilized, but perfection's boring too. So we're going to come back in here, and now we can quilt this, and that quilting is going to take care of those ripples right there. Easy peasy. I want to do something a little different. I am going to make that wave that I've been putting around my paisleys around that swirl. I just felt like doing something a little different. And circles are your friend if you've got some fullness areas in a quilt. It really helps disperse those ripples and move them. I'm not going to do a swirl in that one because then it would be getting too dense. So we're just going to come around here. Now the teapots, I will add additional lines to them to give the effect of, this is the teapot, teapot lid right here. I'll do a line across here to give it the effect of being the lid versus the body of the teapot. And then I'll probably do another line or two in the body of the teapot. I don't want it to look unquilted. Well, you guys don't want to see that. There we go. Back at the foot. Sorry about that. So I'm very disappointed that, well, I won't say all disappointment. Janome has decided to push back the launch of their new top-of-the-line sewing and embroidery machine. It was supposed to be unveiled in September, early September at a dealer conference, but they have decided to put the conference off and put off the reveal of the new machine until the dealers can safely have some time with the machine. We already knew that quantities were going to be low for this new machine because of the shortage of computer chips. And so they were going to have to limit the dealers to just, I think, one machine per shop at first. And, you know, that would be disappointing. So, and of course, we want to be safe. Nobody wants to get sick or spread illness to someone else. So I think they made the right call. But it is disappointing, especially because me and the mister were going to take a couple of extra days in San Antonio, Texas, where the conference was going to be, and enjoy a little time together without our kids, which we have not had time together without our kids in years. It's been years, people. I don't know how we've done it. But yeah, it's been 11 years. The last time we had a night away without children was when my husband was having surgery to remove a tumor. And that was one heck of a year. And I don't think that should count. All right, so I've just stitched a couple of times in place right here. And I'm going to use my thread cutter. And I'm going to show you what I've done, and I think we're going to call it a night. That's been a good bit of stitching. And there we go. There's our teapot. Still have about half of the block left to do. Let's turn it around and take a look out from underneath the machine. But I'm sure we will get to go to San Antonio again. I think we are going to go ahead and have a little trip together in more of a staycation style without getting too far from home and without having to get on an airplane. So that will work. So I'm going to erase my little purple lines that I used. I love taking the purple lines out so that I don't have to see them, and then I can look at my final design a little bit better. I think I'm about due for a new eraser pen. I've had this one, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years. But it's starting to give out on me, so there we go. I hope you enjoyed my live quilting show today. We're going to keep doing these live quilting sessions on YouTube here. If everything goes well, it will be every Friday at 7. Occasionally there may have to be a skipped night, but 7 o'clock Eastern Standard. Are we Eastern Daylight right now? I don't know. Eastern Time in the U.S., which apparently is Saturday morning for the Aussies. It's not a good time for folks in the UK or Europe, but that's the best we can do. This video will be posted after I'm done, so you can watch it some other time or other people can catch it. So thanks for watching. Leave a comment, a question, and I'll be happy to get back to you. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.